Peace, love, and happiness, beautiful people. You are tuned in to another episode of Real Estate with B with your gracious host, moi, Oyabi Ajinaku. Everybody calls me B. I am a realtor in the state of Illinois, and I am here to discuss real estate topics with you so that we can get you into your new family home and who knows, maybe even invest one day. But first, before we even jump into this episode, which is a banger for you guys, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, and the share button so that you can get notifications and everything when videos do drop. New episodes drop every Tuesday, just sometime throughout the day. You can catch when it is the latest new episode dropped on my Instagram page at Real Estate with B, or my TikTok page, Real Estate with B, or my website, Real Estate with B. Pretty much everything is going to be Real Estate with B. But don't forget, like, subscribe, and share. But now that we got that out the way, I wanted to take a moment to talk with you guys about how do you prepare to even buy real estate. So in a past episode, we did discuss the different types of real estate so that you can have an idea of what you are looking to do with your family. So we'll jump into it because everybody asks me, well, am I ready to purchase right now? Do I need this? Do I need that? And I find that there is a lot of misguidance out there. So, which is why I wanted to start the podcast to demystify a lot of these topics for you. But today we're talking about how do you get prepared to buy real estate. And there are three things that you have to be cognizant of when you are looking to prepare to buy real estate. Some people could just jump right in. Go ahead. If that's you, jump right in. There's people that use other people's money to do other people's things, but that's not everybody. So this is just going to give you a general idea of things to be aware of as you do start to prepare to get ready to purchase your first home. Or who knows, even get these things together so you can purchase your first investment property, because it still overlaps with that as well. So the three things that I did want to talk about specifically today are budgeting, credit, and savings. Now, taxes, we'll just go over that really briefly, meaning file your taxes. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. If you are a self-employment, file your taxes. If you have a W-2, file your taxes. Nothing really to sugarcoat right there. The only thing that I will say is that you want to be aware when you are purchasing and when you do produce your taxes for your lender, do be aware of how much you wrote off as a loss if you're an entrepreneur, because that will affect how much you get pre-approved for. One of the things that I like to counsel people is, if you're an entrepreneur, go ahead and speak with your tax professional first and let them know, like, hey, I'm looking to purchase a property. And then they know what to do from there. If they're good, they know what to do from there, because they'll understand that not everything you want to write off. And then they'll also build things back in like depreciation, mileage, and so forth like that. But that's for myself, entrepreneurs, those 1099s and so forth, people who are taking the money up top and then paying Uncle Sam on the back end. That was for you. So for my W-2 people, just file your taxes like you normally file them. Do your write-offs how you normally do it, and so forth. We did discuss in a previous episode what the tax benefits are when you are owning a home. You do get benefits. So a lot of the times that becomes a plus for you in the next year. But another thing to also be aware of, if you are making enough money, how do I put this? Making enough money year over year, going back to the entrepreneurs. I know I'm like flip-flopping and everything like that, because it's really basic. Just file your taxes for the most part and talk to your tax professional. But for your self-entrepreneurs, do also be aware of if you are increasing your wealth over the years. Because it does get a little sketchy if one year you're making $75,000 and then the next year you're making $72,000. It looks like it might be a trend going downward, and underwriting gets a little scared about that. So that is something I do want you to be aware of. When it comes to W-2s, you don't have to worry about that as much, is because you're usually going to get a raise If you ask for one, if that's your type of job that you're in. If not, you have a stable income that's going to be year over year the same. Okay, so now that we got that out the way, because like I said, that was just really simple. We want to talk about the big three that a lot of people need assistance with, and that's with your budgeting, your credit, and then your savings. So number one, budgeting. If you don't know how much money is coming in and you don't know how much money is going out, you're not ready for a house. That's just what it is. Because owning a house or making a big purchase as a home is so crucial to have your finances in order, to understand, to have some type of financial literacy, because you can end up in a very, very big hole that is not necessary. You're a business. I don't know if you know this, but I'm gonna tell you this right now. You are business. You are somebody that takes in income and spends. Same as a business. Businesses are modeled after you, if you actually think about it. So your household should be ran as such. What's coming in and what's going out. So your income versus your expenses. Now your income is pretty much what you make. Your wages. Your earned income if you have a couple side hustles or side businesses. That's what's coming in. If you have a partner that you live with, your spouse, your significant other, heck, even children are producing income these days. That's all coming into the household. That is your income. It's the pot that you look at and you say, hey, we have this much money to spend, but you don't want to spend it all. You do not want to spend it all. In fact, when it comes to budgeting and when it comes to the best practices, you actually want to pay yourself first. And what that means is, this ties into what we're going to talk about a little bit later, but you actually want to pay yourself first. And that can be any percentage from 50, 20, 10%. If you want to be aggressive with it, go ahead and 50% it. But there are different models that you can research that helps you understand what you should be saving and how much you should be saving for yourself and so forth. Because you always want to have emergency expenses funds as well. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So what you're bringing in is the pot that you have. You want to pay yourself first, and then everything else is what you're spending. Because I know we talked about previously how housing usually makes up 30% of your household expenses, which is a big chunk if you think about it. And a lot of factors are based off of that, because one thing that the landlords and the banks want to know is that they're going to get paid. So that's why it's a very big, huge factor when they look at everything. If you feel like you do not have enough money coming in, which is something that I felt like, you can start a side business. You can sell t-shirts, sell wristbands, sell perfumes, candles. Whatever you do as a hobby can actually be turned into a side hustle if you think about it. I don't know where you might have not been since the pandemic, but that's what a lot of people did. They ended up turning their hobbies into their new businesses and generating significant amounts of income from it to where they can retire from their full-time job. But let's be honest, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to be a business owner. Nobody's here to push you for that. But you do want to make sure that you have multiple streams of income coming in, because when one thing falls, it could, especially if something huge like wages or you lose your job or whatever, that's a big, big loss. Versus if you have multiple streams of income coming in, you know you have some time to bounce back. So that's wages and earned income that we wanted to talk about. Now, that could be a part-time job, that could be a side hustle. I'll leave that up to for you to determine what it is that you feel comfortable doing. Now, let's go over to the other side of budgeting, which is the expenses. We talked about the income being all the money that we bring in. The expenses is all the money that is going out. And let me tell you, we have a spending problem. I don't know if it's just an American thing, and I'll ask a lot of my other friends and so forth, but I think we have a spending problem. We do. Let's talk about it first. So expenses are pretty much what goes out. So your bills, your debt. Those are the two major factors when it comes to expenses. Now, expenses can be further broken down, or your bills can be further broken down into two categories, which is fixed income and variable income. So with the fixed income, that is what you're going to pay, the same amount that you pay every month. That's a fixed income, okay? That means your rent or your mortgage. That means your car note. Your phone bill typically is a fixed income. Not a fixed income, but a fixed expense. And that's if you are not always traveling internationally, because then it becomes a variable because of the international surcharges that mobile providers like to tag on to us. But those are typically your fixed expenses, your daycare and such like that. Those are fixed. You know that they're going to be the same amount every month. Then you have your variable expenses, which they vary. They're different every month. That can be your grocery bill, how much you like to entertain yourself by going out. I had a problem with that. I'm not even gonna lie, I had a problem with that. That can be your gases, that can be your utilities, your gas and your electric, your water bill, just because those things vary by usage on how much you use it that month. That's why you see, well, here in the Midwest, that's why you see gas bills are higher in the wintertime, lower in the summertime. Electric bills are higher in the summertime, lower in the, well, they just high sometimes because you running your electric all the time when it comes to air conditioning if you have it. Regardless, it's a variable expense because it varies every single month. You want to pay attention to your variable expenses because they can be controlled. If you think about it, your variable expenses really showcase how you operate, your spending habits, how you consume, how you think. Those are what's your credit profile kind of builds out as well, because a lot of that is tied to your debt of the credit card. Now let's talk about debt, because we, especially here in America, have a really big problem with debt. Like over the last several years, even from last year, it has increased 8%. The New York Federal Reserve did say that the most debt when it comes to not the tiers, but the different categories are your mortgage, your student loans, your credit card debt, and your auto loans. Those are all debts. Newsflash. And some of us are lucky to not have a car note, and some of us continuously go get a car note. And manufacturers built these cars, and we go out and we get $600 car notes and so forth. So that ends up being a big ticket item. Houses, we already know, because you're purchasing something that's on average $355,000 here in Chicago, at least, and more in other markets. So that is a very huge expense. And then education has always been a big debt. We've always talked about the student loans and so forth that we are accumulating just to get our degrees, to go get a profession, to get those wages that we feel that we are deserve. So that is something that we want to be aware of. But here's the thing. If you do have student loans, they did close it for temporary, but you do want to be on the lookout if the government opens it back up with this administration. It's the student loan forgiveness debt. So you can apply for it. Just Google student loan forgiveness and see if they open it back up and put in your bid so you can get that all forgiven. There are some parameters that deal with how much you make, where you live, and so forth like that. But do try to apply for that, because we'll get into credit next, but it helps with your debt to income ratio. And what your debt to income ratio means is how much you're bringing in versus how much you're spending, or how much you owe, how much you are carrying on a monthly basis, should I say. That's your debt to income ratio. And lenders, banks, creditors, they all look at that because it gives them an idea on if you're going to pay them back or not. Because let's face it, if you're making, let's just say, $10,000 a month, and you're spending $8,500 a month, that's kind of suspect. Or $9,500 a month is super suspect, because you have no wiggle room. If something happens tomorrow, you're gonna falter. Your resilience factor is very, very low, because you won't be able to bounce back, essentially, because you're going to have to stop something in order to pay for that expense that just comes up random. So that is your debt to income ratio. typically what lenders like to see it is below the 40 to 30% mark, because you can qualify for a lot of grants when it's around in that area. And we'll talk about grants and so forth. So when we come to talk about our debts and how we have a relationship with it and how we look at it, it's kind of crazy. $3,000 extra a month Americans added to their expenses last year coming into this year. That was unnecessary. For what? For things that we want right now. Don't get me wrong. I do believe in living your life. You grown, do what you want. I do what I want, so you do what you want. But if we are trying to get to a wealth mindset, we have to have a different relationship with money. Money is to be used for our benefits, not necessarily for us to just work for it. And then, this is me getting on a tangent too, by the way. just disclaimer. But it's not for us to just get into and just spend it or whatever, however we want and so forth. Because with that type of mindset, we're always looking to replace versus have our money earn more for us that we can spend from. What I'm trying to say is simply this: our money should be working for us, not for it. Period. That's what I'm trying to say. I will be creating a template for you to use as you get your finances in order, as you start to budget and care more about what money is coming in versus what's going out, because it will showcase a lot of gaps. I know it did for me several years ago when I went into my household budgeting and I had to get everything under control because I couldn't figure out. I was working, I was spending I was working and I had all this money, but I never had any money at the end of the day. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized, well, for me, it was always an income situation. As an entrepreneur, you never know where the next check is coming until you have multiple sources of it coming in. So that's what I ended up doing, because I'm not a wage gal. I'm just not. I'm an entrepreneur. I love the hustle and bustle and all of it. But I had discovered for myself was that it was one, I love Dunkin' and Starbucks too much. I had to cut that down tremendously. I was eating out a lot instead of cooking, which is odd because I really love to cook, but you know, it's the convenience factor here now. Once I sat down, I did those budgeting for the household, I realized that, okay, no, B, we need to tighten this up because we're not going to get anywhere because we're not saving. If an emergency happens, like your tire blows out, you're stuck trying to find a credit card for it and so forth. So once I did that, I was able to start investing, because I like to think of my saving as investing more, and I was able to just have everything on autopilot, so to say. So I know when everything is going out. That's another part of budgeting is, do you know what's going out every week? Do you know what's going out every day? Do you know how much you need to have in the bank this week or that for this month and so forth? Do you have any trips that you're planning that you need to set money aside for so you don't have to worry about it all at the last minute? Those are a lot of different things that you can consider as you're budgeting. Children activities, if you want your children to play sports with, you know, this, that, and the other. Maybe you do have to make a sacrifice over here or there. Maybe little Johnny does need to go cut grass in the summertime to help pay for football camp or whatever like that. It can be a number of things, but you won't know until you actually have it in front of you and look at it from a logical point of view. Like, okay, this is what's coming in, this is what's going out. Either I'm in the negative or I'm in the positive, but by how much? So let's talk credit. Credit is important because this is how lenders and creditors are looking at you to see if they can trust you with the money that they give you. And there are two scores that a lot of people are aware of, and that becomes the FICO score as well as your Vantage score. Now, your Vantage score is typically on your bank apps. However, do not get it twisted. The banks are not necessarily looking at that score to get you approved for a home. They're looking at your FICO score, which is your Fair Isaac Corporation score. That has been around and in existence way longer than your Vantage score, which has been in existence for about 15 years. Now, both of them are very similar and they kind of run parallel, but like the Vantage score is sometimes off or a little bit more, just because they do score things a little bit differently. And when I say score things a little bit differently, that means that FICO and your Vantage score are looking at your credit profile. And your credit profile is made up of your payment history, your amount of credit that you have on your accounts or your debt, new credit, new lines of credit. They're looking at your length of credit history, and they are also looking at your credit mix to see if you are carrying a lot of revolving loans or installment loans and so forth. So all of those are very important, and you can talk to your credit repair specialist or just Google it or whatever to see what those mixes are, to see which lever you pull and so forth like that. There are some things you can do, but I will leave that to a credit repair specialist to talk with you about. I'm not here to talk with you about that. I'm here to talk to you about real estate and how to get you prepared for real estate. But it is important to know about these things as you are being prepared and as you talk to different professionals that are going to help you get into a better situation, like a credit repair specialist, because they're going to tell you about the 35, 30, 15, 10, 10, which is the marks on your credit report. And Vantage score will score those things a little bit differently. But like I said, banks or lenders who are lending you a home loan, a mortgage, are not looking at that. They're looking at your FICO score. So that's very important. Now, your FICO score ranges from 300 to 850. There are some scores that run up to 900, but the FICO runs from 300 to 850. And the Vantage score runs similar to that too, as 300 to 850 as well. Now, 850 is exceptional. Let's just, anything above 800 is exceptional. That is what everybody is looking to aim for and shoot for. Usually you've had very long lengths of credit history, great utilization marks and so forth. Like, you're not overutilizing anything. You pay your everything on time. Like, you never miss a payment and so forth. Like, those type of things get you up to exceptional. Experian, according to the Experian, because I don't know if you know the big three, I'll mention them here. The big three are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. But Experian, they actually, on one of their blogs, they said the average is, for the average score that Americans are carrying, is about 600 to 750. Now, 750, I would say, no, yeah, 750 is really great too. But 680 is that sweet spot, even though it's like fair, according to the scale, but it's that sweet spot when it comes to getting you the purse that you're looking for on your loan. Like a lot of renovation loans and hard money lenders and so forth like that, they like to look for that 680 and that 720. So they love those range of scores, because it shows that you're very trustworthy when it comes to managing your money, because that goes back to budgeting. Budgeting carries over into your credit, if you think about it. Like, it all ties into each other from an economic standpoint. Here's the kicker, though. Poor credit, right? Poor credit is 300 to 580. That's poor. You can still purchase a property, though, with a 580 credit score. I've seen and heard people even get approved with a 535. Believe it or not. But they have to put down more down payment, which we'll talk about in the next section. So a 580 can get you keys, believe it or not. So I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, it's the end of the world if you're below a 600. It's not. People actually purchase all the time with a 580 just by putting down more down payment, because sometimes you don't have the credit score, but you have the savings, you have the income to go ahead and purchase what you want. And lenders will make that work in the underwriting process. So don't get discouraged if you're not in that sweet spot of the 680 to 720 and so forth. You can still purchase with anything between the 580 and 850 for exceptional. It's just that the terms that you are allowed on the contract tends to be better with a higher credit score, because that means you're more trustworthy. And what do we like to do with the people who are better on paper? We like to give them more. Just as honest. You think you'll get back more. So I'm just saying, this is natural way of thinking. But that is a lot of things that you want to be aware of. Once again, I'm not a credit repair specialist. I do not help people fix their credit. I just know about it because I've dealt my credit and my family's members' credit for quite a bit. And I know people. Here's my thing. You want to know how to get good credit? Pay your bills. Simple. Pay your bills and pay them on time. That is the best way to get good credit. Now you can go into all of the fancy savvy things like, oh, I'm getting that removed, or, I'm going to add this trade line and so forth like that. By all means, go ahead. There are ways to beef up your credit profile to get you what you want, for the long run. Not against it at all. But, do be aware that there are some scores as well, though, that can go beyond how you built your profile out. Like if you added trade lines, like they can see like, nah, that's not yours. To get that credit limit together, they can tell from some of those things. Now, it may give you a temporary boost that you need to get approved. Go ahead. I'm not going to say don't try it. I'm always one to say, try and shoot for the stars, land on the moon, and type of things. But just do be aware that there are sometimes that lenders, people who created this credit system in the first place, do have ways of seeing different things. But let's go back to the bankruptcies and a foreclosure. Now, with a foreclosure, that means you had a mortgage before, something happened, and you don't have it anymore. We're just going to put it like that. Things happen, life happens, but typically when you have a foreclosure on your record, you cannot go for a traditional type of loan from a bank for 7 years at least, sometimes 5 years, depending on what banking institution and what loan. Bankruptcies though. Bankruptcies, you can actually purchase, but there are parameters. So let's say you filed a bankruptcy, it could be 713. They allow you to purchase if you have been making consistent payments on it for a year, but you have to be able to furnish the documents saying that you have paid consistently on it for a year, meaning that that could be bank statements that would show it being pulled out at a certain time every year. Can be cash. Cash is not traceable, people. I know a lot of people do not like to keep their money in banks. I do not know why, other than the percentages are very low, but you still need to have some type of track record when it comes to income coming in for the banks and the lending system, to be able to verify, because that's how they like to verify. They like to verify through their records. America, what can I say? It's the system, should I say, because other places are built the same. If you have not, then you cannot purchase. You cannot purchase with the traditional type of loan, should I say. So those are some things that I want you to be aware of when it comes to your credit and what's on your credit profile. Repos and such, they look at that, they like, a little scary, a little dicey right there. Collections, ooh, it's a little scary, a little dicey right there. But typically, when you talk to your lender, they have systems that they can run your credit through, and they can let you know what you need to do to fix your credit. So that's why some people are going to look at me a little sideways for saying that. But you can actually go to your lender and they can pull your credit and they can tell you what you need to do to fix your credit to get approved for the loan that you're looking to get approved for. That's the real. So that's why I tell people all the time, like, okay, you want to know how to fix your credit? You want to know what you need to do to purchase? Go to your lender. Go try to get pre-approved. They're going to let you know what they need from you. And that could be as simple as, hey, pay off this collection, or pay this portion of it, or, talk with this, get that removed, so forth. Like, it's so many different things that you could do to beef up your credit report. It is not necessarily, hey, pay off that loan. Like student loans, you don't necessarily want to pay it all off, because student loans, for the most part, helps you with your credit length history. But I digress, because like I said, I'm just here to talk to you about property. And I can't wait till we get to the fun stuff. Well, we have to talk about these things so that we can get you prepared, so that we can talk about the fun stuff of house searches. All right, so that is the credit bit that I have for you. If you are interested in learning how to get the more accurate scores, I do not recommend Credit Karma, just because Credit Karma is very off for the most part. Usually you don't want to tell your lender or your, not your lender, but you don't want to tell your realtor your Vantage score, just because nobody is going off of your Vantage score to get pre-approved or to get a rental, but your FICO score. And if you're looking for different apps to monitor your FICO score, you can definitely do my FICO. That helps. And if you're looking to actually boost your credit score, like if you feel like you don't have enough credit and so forth, there are things like self-lender, where you lend money to yourself for the most part on a monthly basis, and they report it to credit to the 3 major credit bureaus. Good debt versus bad debt. I do want to talk about that. So the good debt versus bad debt. So everybody gets scared about debt, right? They're like, oh my God, you don't want any debt. Now, I'm an advocate for no debt. That's my goal. I don't want to have anything aside to my name that you can trace back to me like that. But that's just me. That's just how I move. But there is a good such thing as good debt versus bad debt. Now, bad debt is anything that is not making you money. You're just paying in it continuously. And if you think about it, because you're paying interest payments, you're paying extra for it, even with a mortgage. However, when you make your debt work for you, it becomes a good debt. My opinion. I'll just put it like that. But a lot of people do like to use bad debt to get good money. So what I mean by that is this: mortgage. If your goal is just to have your family living in a home, then that typically is a big debt to carry that they don't necessarily consider a good debt, but lenders do on your credit profile. It's weird. It's just weird. But lenders do on your credit profile, but is not necessarily serving you any purpose. Like a car note. As soon as you drive it off the lot, you can't even sell it back at the price you just purchased it for. So that's definitely a bad debt. However, what makes it good is if you throw it on a side hustle like Toro and such like that, because now you're making money from it, that you could pay that debt off earlier and then get just straight consistent income from it. Same thing with a home and a mortgage. Once you get a building and you could put tenants in it and they're paying your mortgage, that becomes something that produces an income for you. Even same thing with credit lines and trade lines. Once you like have a credit card and you have this debt or whatever, you don't necessarily need to use it. You can sell the trade lines on it, and the next thing you know, this credit card that you have the trade lines on, you're now generating money from it. So that's how you can turn a bad debt into good debt. So my thing is, every time when I look at something, if I'm paying on it on a consistent basis, I try to see how I can make it work for me. Not just like what I want to spend, because I do a lot of that too, but but how I can make it work for me. And one of the things like with real estate is definitely a mortgage can be a very hefty debt. You're talking $355,000 on average in Chicagoland area alone. That can be transferred into a good debt because now you're getting $200 off of it every month. Somebody's paying your rent, upwards to $93,000 if you have a whole complex part. Yeah, so do be aware of that. But on your credit profile, they just look at it as debt, and they're looking at your debt to income ratio. So what that means is how much, like I mentioned before, how much money you have coming in versus going out, or how much you owe. So if you, again, to the example of 10,000 and you're at 9,500, you just utilize a lot of your debt. Like you maxed out dang on there. You like 500 away from $500 emergency away from just being just over everything. But if you are bringing in 10,000 and you're only spending 4,000 of it, then you're looking pretty good because you're doing at just a 40% ratio. That's why I use 10,000. It's easy math. We're going to get a lot of math on real estate with B. Trust me, I love math. But that is how you would look at that in your debt to income ratio, and why your credit utilization and mix is so important, because they all tie in together economically, and your spending habits, your consumer habits, and so forth. That ultimately goes up to the GDP. Like, it gets very, very big and very, very small to our level. Moving right along, let's talk about savings. I love saving. When I was little, I used to have like this little orange tin. Oh no, I love orange. It's one of my favorite colors. I used to have this orange tin. I used to have like dollars in it. That's how I used to save. Then I had a piggy bank and a water. Did you guys used to have the water jug? I used to have the water jug that you throw your change in, and you would go and you would dish the change out. Man, I don't see that like that no more. I see like people be having like cups and stuff. I'm like, what you doing with that? You know, it's like only like $2 in there for real. But the big jugs, you can come out with like $100 if you save real good. I'm sorry. back down memory lane. But let's talk about saving. Saving is important because it goes back to, you want to pay yourself first because you want to make sure that you have emergency funds set aside. You never want to be that $500 accident or $500 deductible away from just being over everything. Live like that, life like that for very many years, not fun. I can tell you that is not fun. If you're living like that right now, I know it's not fun, but it's okay because we're getting better, right? That's what it's all about. It's elevating. You grow once you know more. So with savings, you want to pay yourself first. There are different models that you can look at and what works for you. Keeping your money in a bank account gets you like 0.5% or something. So that's why a lot of people don't like to put their money in banks. However, you do want to keep some money in a bank because it shows the lenders that, you know, you got some money in the bank. Because guess what? Banks like to use your money to lend out too. You want to have emergency funds. Let's just say that. So you want to have 3 months saved up. What that means is saved up. So if your monthly expenses are $4,500, you want to have 3 months of $4,500 saved up so that if anything happens, like you lose your job, you at least know you have 3 months to bounce back. Then you want to go to the 6-month mark. Same thing. If something happens, you have 6 months to bounce back because you know your bill's going to be paid. Then you want to go to a year mark. Then you want to go to some people say 2-year mark. I like to say 2, 3, 5, 7. That's how I like to say it. If you can go 7 years, then you might as well just like live your best life. Okay. You're going to see me have a lot of fun on this channel. Go ahead. You do want to have a nice sale savings. But when it comes to purchasing, and this is the thing about a lot of Americans, we don't save. We don't invest. We don't save. There's a select few that do, and they make a buku money. And then there's a lot of people that don't, and they're struggling paycheck to paycheck, which is pretty much day-to-day life of most people that we know. But you want to be aware of where you put your money. Like for me, one of my things is I actually put my money into, I have money in the bank for emergencies and stuff like that. But also I like to put money in investments accounts, just dividend stocks or something like that. I'm not here to give you stock advice. Do what you want with your money. But this is how I like to think of it because I get a better return on it on a year. If it's a dividend stock, they're paying me every 4 months just for using my money. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. So you can research what dividend stocks you'll be into for that. But that's how I like to think about saving even more, because even with E-Trade accounts, what's Edward Jones accounts, even with those investments accounts, lenders are going to look at that and count that as part of your income. That's why I love it, actually. They're going to look at that and say like, hey, okay, because you can liquidate it. You can sell the stocks, you can sell the funds or whatever, and you can use it as a part of your income. Same thing with insurance policies and such too. Like they will look at that and consider that as a part of income. So you want to just be aware. Now, the easiest way to save, keep your money in a bank. Do not keep it in the sock drawer. Do not keep it in a water jug. Because they can't count that. And when you go to purchase a home, it becomes a little bit dicey because it's like, where does money come from? And I know a lot of people like to still do cash-based businesses, but you still want to track your money somehow. Just because when you're going to do, go for big purchases like a house, at least. Just because they're going to look at you sideways and they're like, okay, well, where did this money come from? Because there's a thing called racketeering. There's a thing called money laundering. They want to make sure that you're not funneling ill-gotten gains into this investment, so forth. Because at that point, it's going to get seized by the government. Then they're not going to get paid. It's a bad situation for everybody. So that's why you want to keep your money in a bank when you are looking to purchase a home. And once you purchase, if banks aren't your thing, then they're not your thing. Go ahead and pull your money back out. That's on you. But in order to get in a home, you're going to want to actually put your money in a bank on a consistent basis, at least while you're looking. I've had so many deals fall apart just because the lenders are like, where did this money come from? And then they're trying to struggle just to get the money into the bank account. And now you can't because there's only so much money you can put in the bank account at one time. So it becomes very, very interesting at these closing tables, let me tell you. But yeah, it's the best course of action is to save it. And now you may be like, well, how much do I save? Well, great question. Because I'm still an advocate of start where you are. A lot of people like to try to say, well, I'm going to wait till I get 50,000. I'm going to wait till I get 60,000. Great. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll get approved for all of that either, just because your approver is really looking at your income, because we want to make sure you can consistently pay on a monthly basis. But by all means, go ahead and save all of that for your new furniture, your new home, everything. I'm not going to knock you on it. But there are some people who may just want to get started now, right? Well, you definitely want to be aware of the 3% down payment or the 3.5% down payment. I like to say 3.5% down payment because not everybody may go to the lenders that do the 3% down payment. Cool. Of your purchase price. So let's just do an example here. We have the average home sale in Chicagoland area right now is $355,000. So 3.5% of that, 3.5%. Actually, I did 3% of that. So 3% of that is $10,650. You want to at least have that saved. Now, your closing costs can be anywhere from 3 to 6%. So if it's at 6%, then you're looking at a little bit over 20,000. It's was it 21,300 if I'm not mistaken. That will be your closing costs. That means paying your lenders, paying realtors, paying your attorneys, paying inspections, paying everything that goes with getting to the closing table, your taxes on the property and so forth. That's what is in the closing costs. Then you want to be aware of the earnest money. Now here's the thing. Your earnest money is going to be fed back into the property. So you don't have to count it twice. So if you say you need $10,650, you need $10,650. When it comes time for that earnest money to come up, just take 1% of that. So for a $355,000 home, that'd be $3,550. You'll take that from that $10,000 and you will still bring that to the table because your earnest money is going to sit there for you until you close. That's just good faith saying that, yeah, I'm going to purchase your property to the seller. So you're not going to count that twice. Now the closing costs though, when you have a good realtor that know what they're doing, they can knock those closing costs down for you. As well as if you have the market climate for it. Because there were times like over the last couple of years when nobody was giving seller concessions. They were like, nope, you giving full price, 0 seller concessions. I want that deal over there. Because no, sellers don't want to come out of more pocket, but they will to sell their home. And that's what the seller concessions come in at. Now, right now I'm shooting this in March of 2022. I'm shooting this in March of 2023. They giving out seller concessions right now. So a good realtor will actually advocate for you to get seller concessions. Now, here's a kicker though. You can get up to 3%, if not more in some cases, depending on the loan, of seller concessions from the seller. So guess what that means? So that $20,000, that $21,000 I told you about earlier, closing costs that you needed, you can knock that in half because the seller gonna pay half of that. They're gonna pay it. So in the seller concessions, so then you talking $21,300 now that you need, right? But here's another kicker, because that includes your inspections and all this other stuff. And here's another kicker. There are different grants that you can qualify for that knocks your down payment down. You can ask your lender for some concessions as well. And lenders can knock their points down. So it's just so many negotiations that can happen. But guess what? It happens if you have a really great credit score and really strong income as well. So think about that. You have to be in a position to negotiate in the first place. But for the most part, if you have a great debt to income ratio, where meaning it's below 30, below 40% for some grants, you can qualify to get your down payment paid for. So I've seen a lot of people actually go to the closing table with nothing. They sometimes get a check. Why? Because they ask for the seller concessions, they ask for the grants, they ask for the lender points, gifts from family members, because you could actually have family members gift you amounts of money in order to close on a home. So yeah, it's a lot that can go into it in terms of like how much you need to have saved. But if you just need an answer for this market and so forth, I would say the best way to start would be about 10,000 to about 25,000 just to get started. And if you can save more, awesome. More power to you. But it has to be in a bank. It can't be in a shoebox or anything like that. It has to be in a bank because that's how they're tracking it. You don't want to be saving in a shoebox and then trying to hustle and bustle just to get your money in a bank just to close on a property, because they're not going to accept it, because there are things called racketeering and money laundering, and they want to make sure that you're not doing that on the property that they're giving to you, because if the government sees it, then they take it and then they don't get paid and you're in jail. Like, it's just a bad situation overall. So that's why they look out for these certain things when it comes to how much money you have in a bank and how you're putting the money into the bank as well. So definitely, if you have an income coming in, even if you're a cash-based business, put it in a bank. Don't keep it in a shoebox or in a mattress or anything like that. Can't tell you how many different things I've seen at the closing table. But for the most part, those are the three major things. I will leave it on that note. If you do have any questions, you guys know where to find me. You can also send a DM. I will answer them. We can get on the phone and talk. I am accessible. I talk about real estate all day, every day. That's what I do. Yeah, and we got some more hotness planned for you. I got credit repair specialists coming on and more lenders coming on to talk about different loans. So keep tuning in. Hit that notification button, because you want to know when the next episode drops so we can get you in that home or that investment property. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to leave it at that, and we out.